Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
But we begin tonight, as we always must, with the numbers. As of today, the United States has 53,441 reported cases of coronavirus and 690 reported deaths from coronavirus. But there is good news tonight. The President of the United States is not in charge. Now, that would be bad news in a pandemic if the president were anyone other than Donald Trump. So the good news is that the worst, most corrupt president in history is not in charge of what he referred to today as opening up the country. Donald Trump did not close down the country, and so Donald Trump cannot open up the country. If you're at home in America today and you didn't go to work, it's because your employer told you to stay home or your governor ordered you to stay home, because your governors are in charge of what you can and cannot do in your states now, not the President of the United States, who has not closed a single business in the United States. Donald Trump has not closed anything in the United States, and so Donald Trump cannot reopen anything in the United States. So everything Donald Trump said today about opening up the country is utter nonsense, but it is deadly nonsense.
So I think Easter Sunday, and you'll have packed churches all over our country.
If that happened on Easter Sunday, just 19 days from now, then in May, you would have millions of dead people all over the country. Millions. If you had packed churches all over the country, including California, on Easter Sunday, by May, there could be 1 million dead people in California. Packed churches on Easter Sunday in the state of New York. Packed churches in Massachusetts, where the Republican governor today ordered the closure of all non-essential businesses in Massachusetts. And when you're at home tomorrow in Massachusetts, it's because your governor, Charlie Baker, told you to stay home, not Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has absolutely no control over when you go back to work in Massachusetts or in Louisiana, a state that Donald Trump won by 20 points. You didn't go to work today in Louisiana because your governor won't let you. And in Louisiana today, your governor told the President of the United States that Louisiana may run out of hospital capacity by early April. Easter is April 12th. None of the governors who have shut down their states have paid any attention to what Donald Trump thinks about shutting down businesses. None of the fevered daydreams that Donald Trump shared with the country today are going to happen. None of them. Churches are not going to be packed all over the country on Easter. The Pope has canceled public Easter Sunday services at the Vatican, and he did it 2 weeks ago. And Donald Trump wants you in a packed church in America on Easter Sunday. The Pope doesn't want you to die by going to church. But Donald Trump? Well, Donald Trump thinks you're going to die anyway. Donald Trump actually said today that if you do not go back to work by Easter, you will kill yourselves. That's what he said. That's the way Donald Trump actually sees this situation. That's the way Donald Trump sees you. Donald Trump does not believe that life is worth living if you lose money. If you have less money this year than last year, if you have a lot less money this year than last year, then the obvious choice is to kill yourself, because life is not worth living in Donald Trump's value system.
You're going to lose more people by putting a country into a massive recession or depression. You're going to lose people. You're going to have suicides by the thousands.
Just let that sink in. Suicides by the thousands. You have a president of the United States who believes that if the whole country goes back to work in 3 weeks, the number of people who will die from coronavirus is less than the number of people who would kill themselves if they don't go back to work. He believes that is your value system. He believes that is the state of mental health in America. He believes we are on the verge of mass suicides. And so in order to save you from your looming suicide, he wants you to go back to work and maybe get killed by the coronavirus. But he's absolutely certain that the coronavirus body count will be lower than what he sees as the inevitable suicide body count. In the years of vile madness spewing from the mouth of Donald Trump, we have never heard a sicker, more perverse formulation than what that man said today. He said it's time for America to choose between death from coronavirus or mass suicide. Donald Trump thinks he's a wartime president, but he doesn't think the war should last for more than another month. Because if it does, Americans will kill themselves. Ask Donald Trump how long World War II lasted, and I guarantee you he has no idea. But he does seem to think that staying home, watching Netflix, is more difficult than winning World War II. Nothing Donald Trump said today has any legal power whatsoever, none. But surely there will be some fanatical Trump followers taking more risks because of what Donald Trump said today, including the deadly risk of gathering on Easter Sunday without enough social distancing. And so it is very likely that more people will get sick because of Donald Trump's Easter vision, and more people will die in America because of Donald Trump's Easter vision. And they won't all be Trump followers, because we are all in this infection pool together. And if Donald Trump encourages people to take risks that get them infected, we are not immune from the infected Trump followers. And so Donald Trump's encouragement of recklessness today is just more encouragement for the sane people of America, the majority, to stay in their homes and not interact with anyone outside of their homes. In other words, it is more encouragement for New York and California and all the other locked down states to remain locked down. California and New York produce almost 25% of the gross national product of the United States of America. 25% of our economy tonight is under the control of the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, and the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo. And today, New York saw a spike in its reported coronavirus cases. New York's rate of infection is now doubling every 3 days. Today, Governor Cuomo made it very clear there will be no packed churches in the state of New York on Easter Sunday. And he had a very important warning for America.
New York is the canary in the coal mine. New York is going first. We have the highest and the fastest rate of infection. What happens to New York is going to wind up happening to California and Washington State and Illinois. It's just a matter of time. We are just a test case. We are just a test case. And that's how the nation should look at it. Look at us today. Where we are today, you will be in 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks or 6 weeks. We are your future.
It is Wednesday, the 25th of March of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? And there seem to be quite a few of them. One big one at Liberty University, though I would not call him a priest. A heretic, maybe. Yeah, certainly not a priest. But elevated to the echelon of spiritual hierarchy here in this plane of existence in the United States, at least. So I actually think that there are Republican politicians trying to keep Falwell from opening up Liberty University. We'll see how that goes. Petri dish of infections, that's what they always say, petri dish of disease, wherever kids congregate, no matter how old they are. Well, sadly, the death totals in America continue to rise exponentially, and you know what? We're not even hearing all of them. It is being suppressed. Anecdotal evidence that I've been gleaning suggests that the numbers that we're getting from the feds, and in some cases even states, are grossly underreported. I'm trying to figure out how ERs across the nation are at their capacity for respiratory help, but we're not hearing about it. We hear about it, but it's not reflected in the totals. Something's up. Hey, Vlad has finally come around, and he's pretty much stopping Russia right now. He's locking them down. Yeah, it's he couldn't hide the fact that his country was decimated since they share borders. They share borders with infected countries and people going back and forth across those borders. Boy, I hate the idea that we're all going to become isolationists now. I hate the idea we're going to become isolationists within our own little neighborhoods. Hi there. We'll wave at people through the window. We're not even going to go outside on the front porch anymore. Eee. This is like the Matrix, isn't it? We're going to be locked in some sort of weird gelatinous cocoon. I don't want that. Do you? No, you don't. I have noticed that Trump did win a lot of vacant land in America. Well, attributed to winning. And since it's vacant, couldn't we just quarantine a lot of people there, especially, the ones that go to coronavirus parties so they can play COVID-19 roulette? What's up with that? Yeah, kids going to coronavirus parties, and they're going to share germs, and they did, and now the kids are sick. This is nothing to be trifling with, folks. This is not TV. This is not Main Street at Disneyland, if you remember what that was like. I'm not talking Disney World. I'm talking about Disneyland. Come on. So we are in big trouble. And it looks like the leaders that are supposed to be leading are a bunch of mobsters. And mobsters always play catch-up. Leaders lead. That's why, as much as I have reservations about this, but Governor Cuomo is a leader. I have my issues with Governor Cuomo. Don't we all? But he is leading. And he's not the only governor in America who has stepped up to the plate and are actually leading. And we have doctors and nurses and, you know what, regular folk sewing masks so that medical personnel can use them. Isn't it interesting that something like masks are unavailable? Bought up, everybody thought we were going to get our water poisoned. Nah, buy up the masks. Okay. I've been telling people for a couple of years now, property is always more valuable when delivered vacant to a hostile foreign power. Who that foreign power may be is left up to conjecture. It might be a group that writes all of their mob contracts in Cyrillic. Or it might be from a nation state that doesn't write their mob contracts in Cyrillic. This is the world we're living in now. Donald Trump believes that our value system is such that we would commit suicides if we can't go back to work. If stock market doesn't open up, there's a lot of stockbrokers going to be jumping out of windows. Thousands of stockbrokers jumping out of windows. That's the value system. We could have 1 million just regular people, like chefs in little cafes in New York. Little 9-year-old kids. It hits everybody. Old or young or exempt from this disease. No, they're not. Multiply that across the nation. Yeah, you can see why there's not enough masks. ERs at full capacity for treating a respiratory illness. And we're not even talking about broken legs and stents for hearts. They all thought that after all this time that was going to be our water. They're going to put LSD in our water. They're going to put arsenic or some sort of poison in our water. Okay. Disaster capitalism, or whatever you call it, disaster fascism, there's that too. Rears its ugly head whenever there's a crisis. A crisis? Crises, as in plural, because we have some crises going on right now, obviously. Oh, boy. So, November comes up pretty soon, even though we'll be hunkered down, and you know it. And I will say one more thing. Easter apparently is when COVID-19 rises from the dead. Do we allow that? I'm reading that Trump is going to force businesses to open. Force? Cuomo is not showing Trump enough fealty. And that's why Trump gets to shoot people with COVID-19 on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. He just doesn't show me enough respect. What is up with that? I mean, we don't even need to play the brain exercise, the little mental exercise of what would happen if Obama ... We don't even need to play that game. But since I mentioned it, can you imagine? Yeah, the guy wore a tan suit. And they wanted to impeach his ass. The guy used Grey Poupon mustard. They wanted to impeach his ass. So maybe some of this weird conspiracy tinfoil hat stuff that I've been hearing for a long time, maybe part of it might be true. Maybe the coup actually happened a long time ago, Ronald Reagan. Maybe. Because it sure seems like the infrastructure leans towards a Donald Trump and seems to be at odds with a Barack Obama. How is that? How is that possible in a representative democracy? Okay. I would like to talk to Hamilton about that, but Hamilton's dead. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, of course, at the top. Thank you, Lawrence. All right. Every now and then, Lawrence gets a bit righteous, and you gotta love it. On the rest of the menu, a full 60% of North Carolina voters say Burr should resign over his coronavirus stock dumping scandal. Yeah, over 60%. Republicans falsely claim that voting by mail is fraud because it's really hard to suppress the vote when states vote by mail. It's really odd. It's hard for them. And the NCAA ruled leading Heisman candidate Trevor Lawrence of Clemson and his girlfriend, soccer star Marissa Mowry, did not do anything wrong in trying to help coronavirus victims and their families. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Australia strongly objected to the formal indictment of Chinese-Australian writer Yang Hengju. And tsunami warnings were issued after a magnitude 7.8 quake struck off Russia's Kuril Islands. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Oh, belated happy birthday to Kelly. She celebrated a birthday not yesterday, but the day before. And it's sometimes hard to follow because it came on Facebook or one of the platforms. And, of course, I'm suspended on Facebook. We'll get to that. And I wasn't too sure if it was just when she had started her account. It's sometimes uncertain. But it was indeed her birthday, so let's all extend at least belated happy birthday wishes. To the leftish of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, at the bottom, across from the chat room link, is our link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, we are able to pay our bills and get our needed machinery that we cycle in about every 4 years, because we are celebrating our 9th year of Resistance Radio this year, indeed. And in about a couple of weeks now, it will be the 9th year of continuous 24/7, 365 broadcasting for Resistance Radio. And thank you for allowing us to fulfill our civic duty. One note, there's been a bit of real-life issues, over and above the whole pandemic, or maybe just below the surface of it. And I have not actually gotten the bumper sticker and our ad block to just recent Patreons to Netroots Radio. And I will indeed get that in the mail. I'm sorry for being so bereft in my duties. Hang tight. It will be coming. And I will try to do that today, even though there's a lot of stuff we got to do. But we are all home now, so I might as well take advantage. I will. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of at Justice Putnam, and I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that linked up on social media, except for Facebook, because I'm still suspended from Facebook. I think I got 20 days now, 20 days. And I noticed that some of the perpetrators, or at least a perpetrator of my suspensions, in some fashion, this fellow was a part. It would be a comment of his or that I responded to that would get me suspended. I think that he was kicked out, but he has been so brazen that he's made up a new identity and somehow got back in a private group by invite only. So I can only imagine, there are some anti-abortion neo-Nazi types that would, invite those other types back in. And the guy's brazen. He didn't really even change his name. He changed his gender, even though on the profile page it says he. but some sort of feminine gender with his actual name. The guy purports to be Bradley Jackson. That's how I've known him for a while. And now it's like some girl's name, like Sabrina Jackson Bradley. What's up with that? Brazen. Another identity. And I won't do that. I know everybody says, oh yeah, you got to do a sock puppet thing. I'm not doing it. I don't play that way. Excuse me. I'll wait it out, and I know what's going to happen. Another comment from months ago is going to be flagged, and I'll be suspended for what, 6 months? Then I guess I will have to make up a sock puppet account, won't I? Damn, I hate these. Zuckerberg. You would expect it from a guy who had a Rate a Babe photo site. How would you rate this babe? How would you rate this babe? Rate a co-ed. Rate a babe. That's the morality that underpins Facebook. Let's be clear. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West. And pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. I better get into our offerings here. We did curate a show, and the rants have become longer and longer. What the heck? Well, this first offering comes out of the American Independent, and it is by Dan Desai Martin. A full 60% of North Carolina voters believe Senator Richard Burr should resign after Burr and his wife were discovered to have sold up to $1.7 million in stock days before the market crashed amid coronavirus fears, a new poll said. The poll released by the Public Policy Polling Group showed that only 22% of voters believe Burr should remain in office following the scandal. We call that the toxic 22%. Even among Republicans, only 38 said Burr should remain in office. Well, that's still toxic. Records first uncovered by ProPublica and the Center for Responsive Politics showed that Burr and his wife sold up to $1.7 million in stocks from late January through the middle of February. Burr, who is the top Republican on the Senate Intel Committee, as in the chairman, made the sales as health officials were warning about the impact of the coronavirus outbreak. Shortly after Burr made the sales, the stock market crashed, losing close to a third of its value. Burr has betrayed the trust of every North Carolinian in a time of crisis and should resign immediately, Wayne Goodwin, chair of the North Carolina Democratic Party, said in a statement shortly after the scandal broke. Burr was sued on Monday of this week by shareholders who accused him of using private information to sell most of his assets. That's called insider trading. Of course, Burr was one of only a few politicians, and they were all Republicans, who voted against a bill to prevent insider trading by Senate Republicans. Now, it is illegal for senators to use non-public information to buy and sell stocks. Burr denied he used inside information and has called for the Senate Ethics Committee to investigate his actions. In addition to the market scandal, Burr also faced criticism for comments he made on February 13th when he told a small gathering that the new coronavirus was much more aggressive in its transmission than anything that we have seen in recent history and is probably more akin to the 1918 pandemic. A recording of the comments obtained by NPR showed Burr's private comments were at odds with his public comments at the time, when Donald Trump was still downplaying the severity of the crisis. Before the scandal broke, Burr had slightly better approval ratings among North Carolinians. In June, 32% of North Carolina voters approved of his job performance, while 36% disapproved. Could that be because of his actions during the impeachment hearing, or shall I say inaction? This week's poll showed Burr's overall job approval has dropped to 22%, which means approximately 54% of voters said they disapproved. Israel, also of the American Independent, brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. With the 2020 elections already being impacted by the coronavirus pandemic, congressional Democrats are pushing to allow all American voters the option of casting their votes by mail. Trump and his supporters are responding by pushing a baseless conspiracy theory that this is voter fraud. Oh, yeah? Trump retweeted a comment by conservative actor James Wood that said, "Voter fraud by Democrats is the second most dangerous thing to happen to America since this virus." Yeah, and Woods got suspended from Twitter. And Donald Trump Jr. is all a Twitter about it, too, right as we speak. Woods was himself sharing content from right-wing activist Tom Fitton that leftists are using the pretext of the COVID-19 to push an unsecure vote-by-mail free-for-all to steal the 2020 elections. Excuse me, the 2016 elections were stolen by Vlad and company. Excuse me, really? And what about all the gerrymandering all this time and throwing black people off of the voter rolls right before an election? Do we really want to bring up who's been a party to voter manipulation and messing up America? Do we really? Fitton's claim had also been shared by another Republican politician, Representative Jody Hice of Georgia. Republican Greg Murphy of North Carolina accused House Speaker Nancy Pelosi of wanting to make national voting open for fraud in the midst of a national crisis, while several of his GOP colleagues complained that Democrats wanted to federalize elections. Oh, no. Oh, why do they call it America then? Or even the United States? My Senator Ron Wyden, of Oregon, by the way, co-author of a Senate bill to expand mail-in voting, said last week, no one should have to put their health at risk to vote. And the Republicans are saying, hey, we're asking people to die for the economy. Do you think we want to keep them safe from a pandemic while they're voting? Conservatives, who have for years pushed the myth that voter fraud is a widespread problem, claim that mail-in ballots could make it easier for liberals to rig elections. Really? In reality, voter fraud in the U.S. is almost non-existent. And when they do find it, guess who they're voting for? The Republicans. It's really weird. While some studies have found that vote-by-mail balloting may result in a few more cases of voter fraud, it remains very rare. Amber McReynolds, CEO of the nonprofit National Vote at Home Institute, said in an email that fraud was not a major problem with mail-in balloting because the system with things like signature verification helps to detect and prevent fraud. Unfortunately, in some southern states, they use the signature gambit to keep people from voting because they can just say, this isn't you. And when you ask them, well, what kind of expertise do you have in signature verification? And they'll say, well, I took a 3-hour online course, of course. After the 2016 election, Oregon and Washington, states that had already adopted voting by mail, examined the number of suspected voter fraud cases in the general election. Washington found 74 cases out of 3.36 million votes cast at rate of about 0.002%. And Oregon found just 54 cases in the same 0.002%. In a 2016 Washington Monthly Opinion piece, former Oregon State Secretary of State Phil Keisling noted why universal voting by mail should be adopted nationally. Universal vote by mail has also proven to be at least as secure from fraud, and arguably more so, as traditional voting at polls, he wrote, noting that while some fraud has occurred, the odds are about the same as your dying next month in a plane crash caused by a flaming meteorite. Anonymous and probably underpaid worker bees at the Associated Press bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. It turns out Trevor Lawrence and his girlfriend did not do anything wrong when they were trying to help coronavirus victims and their families. You know, you can name the girlfriend, Marissa Mowry. Come on. What sounded like a noble effort but might have been an NCAA violation is okay after all. The NCAA said yesterday, Tuesday, the couple can resume their funding efforts after Clemson officials had shut down their GoFundMe page, COVID-19 family relief and support, for fear the quarterback was committing a violation. Now, of course, they finally got the girlfriend's name here in the fourth paragraph. Lawrence and his girlfriend, Marissa Mowry, received the go-ahead from the governing body for the page after Clemson's compliance office had halted their efforts on Monday afternoon, hours after they had launched it. The roller coaster ride had left Lawrence, one of the leading Heisman Trophy candidates, heading into next season, and Mowry, a soccer player at Anderson at South Carolina University, apologizing for trying to do what they thought was right before the NCAA stepped in. The organization said in a statement it did not ask Clemson to take down the GoFundMe page, and the NCAA said it will continue working with its member schools to assure athletes and those affected by the virus are supported. We applaud Trevor for his efforts. No word on the girlfriend soccer player by the name of Marissa Mowry. All right. That brings us to our break, and wow, we better get to our break, and when we get back from said break, we will go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, a tabloid story comes to life. Postponed from a Fall 19 release to coincide with March Madness, the new movie The Way Back is a basketball drama / redemption story. It stars Ben Affleck in a career-high performance as Jack Cunningham, a former high school hoop star who finds himself, 25 years down the road, being tasked by his alma mater with a seemingly hopeless coaching situation. The years haven't been kind to Jack, who's now a full-blown alcoholic working construction between swigs. It's a ways into the film, maybe a bit too far, before we find out the triggering event for his descent. But the coaching gig turns out to be, well, the way back for him. There are a million ways for a plot like this to turn into a melodramatic airball, but director Gavin O'Connor, who worked with Affleck on The Accountant, manages to avoid having this happen. Driving the film is Affleck's portrayal of Jack Cunningham. Given Affleck's well-publicized challenges, it's obvious that he identifies with the character, and his depiction of Jack's alcohol-related rituals and explosive anger seems more heartfelt than researched. The basketball story involves a Catholic League team from Bishop Hayes High School in the working-class Torrance, California area, which has fallen on hard times due to falling enrollment. The nearly winless, less than 10-man squad manages the de rigueur season turnaround amidst friction with the school's administration, often to good comedic effect, and there's a loosely parallel subplot concerning the place of the game in life. In The Way Back, Hoosiers meets Manchester by the Sea, which starred Affleck's brother Casey back in 2016, and tells a formulaic story in a way that avoids simple formulaic answers. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Steve Mirsky. Here in New York, the coronavirus cases are exploding. We're on the steep part of the curve. Now, you've probably heard about the basic reproduction number, R0 or R0, and that's basically how many people an infected person goes on to infect themselves. Now, the other night, I happened to see a tweet that showed just how big a difference there is over 10 cycles of transmission between a basic reproduction number of 1.3 and a basic reproduction number of 3. The difference was astounding. The 1.3 after 10 cycles infected, on average, 14 other people total. The basic reproduction number of 3.0 led to 59,000. Looking at those numbers was startling. So I got a calculator out, and I'm going to repeat this exercise that I did with the calculator, and you can do it too. It's even a little bit fun, and it's kind of amazing. So I've got two calculators because I'm going to do the two different basic reproduction numbers, the R0s, together. Okay, so the calculator on my left, I'm going to assume 1.3 as the basic reproduction number. Each person infects 1.3 other people on average. The calculator on the right, I'm going to do 2.5, just to pick a number, and because that looks like it may be fairly close to what the coronavirus number is. So we'll start with one person on each side. We multiply by 1.3 on the left to get 1.3, obviously. We multiply by 2.5 on the right to get, not surprisingly, 2.5. For cycle 2, we multiply the one on the left by 1.3 again, and we get 1.69. On the right, we take 2.5, and we multiply it by 2.5, and we get 6.25. So that's 2 rounds. Let's do it again on the left. For the third round, multiplying by 1.3, we now have 2.197. On the right, multiplying by 2.5, we're up to 15.625. So let's do the fourth round here. On the left, we multiply by 1.3, and we're up to 2.86 people. On the right, we multiply by 2.5, we're up to 39.1. On the left, 1.3 is our number, we're up to 3.7. On the right, 2.5 is our number, we're up to 97.7. Another round, 1.3 we multiply by, and we get 4.8 on the left. When we multiply our number on the right by 2.5, we're up to 244. Let's do it again. We're going to multiply by 1.3, and we are now up to 6.3 people. On the left, we multiply our right figure of 244.1 by 2.5, and now we're up to 610 people. Let's do another round. Multiply by 1.3 on the left. We now have 8.2 people infected. Multiply the right number, 610.4, times 2.5. We're up to 1,525.9. But we're not done. We're going to go through this and take 10 rounds. One more on the left by 1.3. We're up to 10.6 people. On the right, multiply by 2.5, 3,814.7. Let's do it again. 1.3 on the left, 13.8, 2.5 on the right brings us up to 9,537. That's why it's so important to cut the number of people each individual can infect with the policies of social distancing.
Sweetie, want some fruit?
You have to use the right tool for the job. A power drill is the wrong tool to slice fruit. Just like an antibiotic is the wrong tool to treat viruses, including colds and flu. Antibiotics are only needed for certain bacterial infections. When they aren't needed, antibiotics won't help you, and the side effects could still hurt you. Ask your healthcare professional when an antibiotic is the right tool and when it's not. Visit cdc.gov/antibiotic-use.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
What does the coronavirus teach us about our election system? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. On Tuesday, March 17th, Arizona, Florida, and Illinois held their primaries as planned, but Ohio postponed its primary, as have other states, including Georgia, Maryland, and Louisiana, and for good and not pretextual reasons. The coronavirus could put at risk voters and poll workers, and fear of being infected by the virus could keep many voters away from the polls altogether. But actually going to the polls should not be a prerequisite for voting. Some states allow voting by mail. Absentee ballots traditionally required a good reason why the voter couldn't vote on Election Day, but some states are now allowing no excuse necessary absentee ballots. And some states allow early voting, which increases turnout and would reduce the possibility of infection and fear of being infected. The failure to disallow early voting, no excuse absentee voting, and voting by mail, as a practical matter, these function as a method of voter suppression. Of course, none of these methods for allowing people to vote is required, even though these methods enhance voter participation and democratic principles and the constitutional principle of one person, one vote. Nonetheless, not having these methods of voting still conforms to the laws of the states where the voting occurs, and those laws will remain in effect unless and until they are changed. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1911. It was one of the most tragic days in U.S. labor history. 146 mostly Jewish and Italian women died in the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in New York City. The death toll was so high because exits were blocked or locked and basic safety precautions were not taken in the sweatshop. Trapped by the flames, some women chose to leap out the windows to their death. Bodies fell from the sky with such force that the sidewalk cracked below. In the aftermath of the tragedy, labor organizers and social reformers pushed for workplace safety reforms. The public reacted with grief and horror at what had occurred. Moses Rosenfeld, who was known as the poet laureate of the slums and sweatshop, captured this grief in a poem he published in Yiddish on the front page of the Jewish Daily Forward 4 days after the fire. Part of the translated poem read, "Sisters mine, oh my sisters, Brethren, hear my sorrow. See where the dead are hidden in dark corners, where life is choked from those who labor. Oh, woe is me, and woe is to the world. On this Sabbath, when an avalanche of red blood and fire pours forth from the God of gold on high. As now my tears stream forth unceasingly, over whom shall we weep first? Over the burned ones, over those beyond recognition, over those who have been crippled or driven senseless or smashed. I weep for them all. Now let us light the holy candles and mark the sorrow of Jewish masses in darkness and poverty. This, our funeral. These, our graves, our children. The beautiful, beautiful flowers destroyed. Our lovely ones burned. Their ashes buried under a mountain of caskets. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Looks like we'll have nearly the same temperature forecast as yesterday. Increasing clouds with showers arriving this afternoon. A high of around 50 degrees. Winds will be light and variable. Expecting about 1/10 of an inch or more during the day. A few clouds overnight. A low in the mid to low 30s. Winds light and variable. And then a little bit of a respite from the rain tomorrow. Partly cloudy. Highs in the mid 50s. Winds light and variable. And then late Thursday night, early Friday morning, we will be having a spate of rain lasting over days. The whole weekend, in fact. And we'll get back to that in a moment. We do have another confirmed case of coronavirus here in Jackson County. We are now having 3 confirmed cases, and nobody has died yet. But 3 here in Jackson County, so we're staying inside. Maybe you should too. Well, pollen is now being rated, and it is moderate, and we are suffering from grass pollen. At least that's what they say we're suffering from. Air quality index in the region is good at 29 parts per million. And the daytime UV index is moderate at 5. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.11 inches. Visibility is down to 6 miles, and relative humidity is at 86%. Oh my. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Yes, some people have their pee tapes. I have mine. Pop the pee or not to pop the pee? That is always the question now, isn't it? London is 56 and sunny. Paris, 54 degrees and sunny. Rome is 56 and partly cloudy with another flood watch. My. Kyiv is 46 and fair. Kabul, 47 with a light rain shower. Hong Kong, 70 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 51 and partly cloudy with a wind advisory. Sydney, Australia is 67 degrees with a rain shower. San Francisco, California is 42 and partly cloudy. And New York is 43 degrees and cloudy. And I should have mentioned, there is a forecast for coronavirus all around the world. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Packham of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Australia called for the immediate release of Chinese-Australian writer Yang Hengju after China formally indicted him of espionage, with Foreign Minister Maurice Payne saying he continued to be held in unacceptable conditions. The writer's detention had strained ties already soured by Australia's decision to ban Chinese technology equipment maker Huawei from its 5G broadband network, and Canberra's accusations of Beijing's meddling in domestic affairs. The government strongly objects to the formal indictment of Australian citizen and academic Dr. Yang Hengju in China on suspicion of espionage, Payne said in an email statement calling for his immediate release. It was unacceptable that Australian consular officials had been denied access to Yang since the end of 2019, she added. In December, Payne had said Yang was being shackled in his prison cell. A former Chinese diplomat turned online journalist and blogger, Yang was formally arrested in August of 2019 on suspicion of espionage, 7 months after originally being detained in the southern city of Guangzhou. Now, understand that espionage is punishable by death in China, and Australia denies that Yang has ever spied for it. In Beijing, Foreign Minister spokesman Guang Zhuang said Australia should respect China's judicial sovereignty. Consular visits had been suspended during a coronavirus epidemic or pandemic that emerged late last year in China, but would resume once the situation stabilizes and makes a turn for the better, the spokesperson said. China is Australia's largest trading partner, and previous diplomatic spats have disrupted exports of coal and wine, as Canberra has become increasingly wary about Beijing's influence within its borders and across the Pacific.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
His final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table is brought to us by anonymous worker bees at Reuters. It looks like Russia has lifted the tsunami warning after a magnitude 7.5 quake off the Kuril Islands in the Pacific Far East. And the RIA news agency reported that residents in the town of Severodvinsk in Russia's Sakhalin region had earlier been evacuated to a safe zone on higher ground. Emergency services reported small waves and no casualties or damage after the earthquake. The sparsely populated Kuril Islands run from Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula to Japan's Hokkaido Island and include 4 disputed islands known as the Southern Kurils in Russia and the Northern Territories in Japan. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know that Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we'll meet up tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.